Hello there, and welcome to this week's Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny.
We really do need to start doing a jazz podcast or something.
I don't know anything about jazz, is the problem with that
That
one.
is a problem, but you have the voice for it.
Well, yeah, maybe. Listen to Rick Smooth Jazz.
I'm sorry, I completely cut you off there.
You did. Just welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Johnny as ever.
And I am Callum as ever.
And exactly, that's what
Or
you
are
wanna be.
we Alphaverse Callum and are we Alphaverse Johnny?
Who knows? Who knows? We might find a bit more about that in a bit and what Callum's on about in case you don't know.
If you haven't read the title, that is, or haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen the movie, probably more likely, but yeah. And you can also get a sneak peek normally most weeks of what we are going to be reviewing in each preceding week. How can they do that, Callum?
Well, you can head to Instagram or to Facebook and under Untitled Film Podcast, one word, you can find all sorts of exciting bits and pieces there. And yes, there is usually a sneak peek and you can ask us questions, send us messages. We do like it. And if you send us anything other than promote it on whatever hack Instagram, I will personally respond to you. If you send anything other than that, I will personally respond to whatever it is, even if it's dumb, even if it's like, we hate you, like, thank you.
Don't you find it sometimes funny when those promote ones are like, I haven't heard from you about you promoting your podcast on my hack Instagram?
Yeah, totally scammy website.
Yeah, absolutely.
You haven't responded to my rambling, poorly syntaxed, poorly grammatically incorrect, poorly spelled message without punctuation. What gives?
I mean, the good news is we are getting big enough now that people want to ask us to do things like that.
I guess so, yeah.
So that is, I suppose, the exciting news.
And let's get that follower count above 54, because we always lose one, then gain one. Lose one,
Yeah, but that's
then gain
because
one.
you get loads of like fake ones appear.
know.
I'd rather have 54 real people,
Me too.
like you guys out there, than 55 fake people. You get like Jenny from the block, 435729552344477772221.
And if you click on the profile that says, hey, honey, I have lots of sexy pictures for you if you follow me back.
It's a weird one though, because I don't get that on my personal account. So why do we get it on
I don't know.
these?
I don't know. There's some algorithm.
If you know, tell us on Instagram. Anyway, I think we should move into more important things. And Callum, what are your first more important thing this week?
So there is some sad news to kick us off. Over the weekend, very popular and loved character actor Lance Reddick died, and you would know him from The Wire, the TV show Fringe, but probably more especially from the John Wick movies. In a way, his job in the John Wick movies are the hardest because Keanu Reeves does all the cool stuff, the fighting, the stunts, but without Lance Reddick's character, the world wouldn't expand. The world building kind of rests on his very ample shoulders because he runs the hotel that all these assassins go to, and he has a very smooth voice, very cool presence. And I've been watching lots of clips from The Wire, and he just has this withering gaze. No one does a withering gaze better than Lance Reddick did.
He was also one of the best guests on the Eric Andre show. Just a random fact.
He is
there.
very funny. And he was also in a really underrated show called Corporate on Comedy Central. Very scathing satire. If you think like any of the Office satires that have come and gone, Office Space, the various versions of The Office, etc., this is blood red satire. And he plays the boss, and he's really, really quite horrible. He's a horrible boss.
Just like the film with Jason Bateman.
But a lot better. So he'll be very missed.
Yeah, that is some sad news. On to some arguably sadder news.
Oh, no. More
Ridley
sad news.
Scott is making a second Gladiator movie.
I've heard about this.
The good part of it is he has signed Denzel Washington up to be involved, but do you really need a second Gladiator movie? Did Gladiator not tell us in its like 400-hour runtime everything we needed to know about
Also, I do
Gladiators?
like Paul Mescal and Barry Koenig. It's going to be, I think he's playing the villain. So they've poached from this year's Oscar nominees.
They have, in fairness to them. But I mean, is Russell Crowe going to come back being really fat? Like, is he going to come back as like a giant? Like,
or a ghost.
Yeah. Not quite sure how that's going to work. But to be fair, I probably am more game for 2023 Russell Crowe to be in it than 20.
Yeah, but he's less thuggy and he's more kind of embraced.
He's less of a dick.
He's embraced
he's pretty good fun these days.
He's embraced the satirical side of himself. He knows how ridiculous he is, and I think he's fully in on the joke now.
I quite enjoyed him. I enjoyed him in that weird movie where he was like Road Rage, or I can't remember what it was called. We saw it.
Road Rage.
Wasn't called Road Rage.
Yeah. That was like one of the first films to open after the pandemic. And it's like this hour and a half.
It wasn't called Road Rage though, but what was it called?
Unhinged,
that was it.
It's an hour and a half thriller, no frills, meat and potato stuff, but it was kind of what the doctor ordered after months of being locked down.
He was also okay in World's something beer run.
I didn't see that.
It's fine. It's Sunday. I would say it's Sunday afternoon movie. Is how if I was to review it.
Fair enough.
5 or 6 out of 10. It got quite mauled, but I don't think it quite deserved a mauling. But it wasn't particularly exciting, either, like amazing either.
I like the cast, and Bill Murray is also in it. Yeah.
Yes, he is, but in a very small role in a bar.
Okay.
He's like a bar.
I think that's his life at the moment.
Well, I think that may even be over now, but that's another story. Anyway, but that was my first piece of news. How about you and your second piece of news?
Well, something quite fun I saw. I keep getting adverts for this on my Facebook, and it's a fashion brand, Saint Laurent, and
Yves Saint Laurent.
Yes, sorry.
Fuck's sake, Callum. Saint Laurent.
Saint Laurent.
Yves Saint Laurent, fucking hell.
They've got this brand called the Director's Cut.
Right.
And their models include David Cronenberg, Jim Jarmusch, Pedro Almodovar, and there's another one. I always forget this one because he's more of a sort of cult filmmaker. And,
still laughing at your Saint Laurent.
And the advert doesn't name him. Oh, Abel Ferreira. They've put him dead last because he's the least well-known of the bunch.
Wow. Interesting.
And I just keep getting these adverts and seeing these kind of well-dressed old men going, is this a movie? And then I click on the advert and it's the new spring-summer line.
It kind of reminds me slightly of when, BMW this would have been about 2003, 2004, did a series of films where they got big directors. So, I can't remember what. I know Guy Ritchie was one of them because the Guy Ritchie one had Madonna in it.
Is that the one where Clive Owen was the driver?
Yes, it was. So Clive Owen was the driver. Yeah. And they got lots of big directors. They did another one that had James Brown in called Beat the Devil and stuff. Okay. And they were mostly pretty good, actually. But that was a weird experiment. You can find most of them on YouTube to this day. So you can type in BMW,
Do you remember
driver.
That was a fairly big deal for a bit. And what's your second bit of news?
William Dafoe open to further return as Spider-Man villain Green Goblin. I mean, that's a great role.
Yeah, he really enjoys that.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what if you could put him in Spider-Verse or something. I feel like you could start having some voices of these characters.
He'd be game for it too.
I think he would. I mean, who isn't game for doing voice work because it's
easy. Get to turn up in your pajamas, unshaven.
Well, if you're like an actor like him, like if you're a voice actor, it's a very hard, grafting job with lots and lots of.
But if you're a famous person, you've been cast because
of your voice. You just turn up and speak in your voice with some sunglasses on, hungover probably for
a lot of the time, I'm sure.
And then often they don't even turn up. They probably just bring a microphone to your house.
Well, especially since COVID, they can probably do that quite easily.
I think was it Jenny Slate or someone I was listening to the other day was saying that they've because of COVID, had to fashion a room in the corner of a door to do voice work now because they where they've put cushions against the wall and stuff and egg boxes and things.
Well, I read interviews with the cast of Bob's Burgers and they said, well, we have a closet or a cupboard that we've kind of put a bunch of soft things around on the shelves.
But yeah, that is my second piece of news. So. From that, we move on to the meat and potatoes of the podcast, or for any vegans out there, the corn and potatoes. What are we going to talk about this week, Callum?
Well, we're going to be talking about, firstly, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It just won all the Oscars, a million Oscars. And to counter it, we're going to be talking about Natural Born Killers, the very 90s Oliver Stone sort of MTV kind of stuff-a-thon.
What is the connection?
Kind of very vivid filmmaking, very obsessive ADHD, jumpings, playing with style and
also
formats, genre bending.
jumping,
yeah, lots of twisting and turning and doing fun stuff with genre and style and very quick cutting sort of enterprise going on.
Exactly. Yeah, we thought they kind of worked well together.
Yes, we did.
So, shall I, or do you want to start off with?
You can go for it.
Okay. So, everything you give me the hard one. Eh?
Yeah.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Good luck.
Is about a family who own a dry cleaners doing their taxes.
Well, that's technically not wrong.
That's actually what it was. I think it was the when they didn't want to kind of give too much of it away, and when it was like in production, I think it was just a woman tries to do her taxes was the synopsis on IMDb.
It's kind of funny.
It is. It is a woman tries to do her taxes, and when she goes to do said taxes, suddenly realizes that she is one of many versions of herself through the multiverse, verse. And a version of her husband comes through the multiverse to tell her that she could be the savior of the multiverse, of all universes. Yeah, I think that's, but I don't want to give too much away.
It's actually probably better to go too light than too heavy.
Yeah,
with the
I think
synopsis
so.
on this one.
I think that is a fair synopsis. So, Callum, what did you think of the 7-time, I think it is, Oscar-winning movie?
I just, with minor reservations along the way, I just adored it. Firstly, I love that it jumps around in different genres. So it's about this family, Evelyn and her husband and daughter and father who's flown in from China, and they're trying so hard to keep their business afloat. They're doing taxes. They've got a party that they're going to be running for people in the community. And that's when all this madness happens. And as you said, an alternate version of her husband comes through and tells her that she needs to save the multiverse. And what I like is that it's so economical. And because of the director's attention to detail, as we mentioned in the previous episode, one of the two directors, Daniel Kwan, found out through the making of this film that he had ADHD. And so you get to see how filmmaking works through someone who is neurodivergent, that it's crazy, but you never lose the threads. Like, even when everything is jumping around, it never quite pulls you out into a different direction as possibly spoil a little bit, the next film might at some points. Minor reservations just to get them out of the way. Could do with shaving 5-10 minutes, something like that. A little bit of time off. It is a little bit too long. But really, I can't really fault it for much else. And on a philosophical point of view, I think it's very interesting because I watched it with my brother recently. He was a lot smarter about me than about this kind of stuff. And he said, it's really good that someone's got Nietzschean philosophy in a film without it being the way that it's perverted. And we sort of did this with the other big Oscar film that we reviewed, The Banshees of Inisherin. We talked about the idea of Stoicism. But Stoicism that gets corrupted can be a very toxic thing. And here, this sort of Nietzschean philosophy can, when twisted with anger and bitterness, can become quite a destructive thing. There are the through line, if you like, the recurring phrase is "nothing matters" or "none of this matters," or some referring to that, and it's usually used in a bad context. Nothing matters, so let's just let this universe get taken apart. But through, without spoiling any of the reservations, it can also show you the positive side. If nothing matters, maybe we should take care of what's tangible, what we can touch and feel. And, it's quite a beautifully drawn conclusion, I thought, about that. It is a little bit of a hard movie to review because I don't want to talk about it too much in specific details because it will become a case of that bit. And when I say that bit, it kind of gives away some of the thread, if you like. So without kind of trying to over-egg things, Johnny, what did you think about this?
Yeah, it was all right. No, I also really, really liked it. I think it was very deserving of its awards. I think it did a lot with a little. You could tell, obviously, the budget wasn't massive, and what they managed to do with that not massive budget was pretty incredible. Visually, it was very interesting. Lots of different sets, lots of different things. The acting pretty much all the way through was top notch. Actually, my least favourite person in it was probably Jamie Lee Curtis, who was fine, but she just didn't do a huge amount.
And it's very much a legacy win.
Mm-hmm. Whereas Stephanie Hsu was like,
I loved her.
She was so much better. Yeah. Her role was really kind of like quite meaty, and again, not to give too much away, but in kind of two parts, which is quite interesting.
And none of it would work without her.
No, it really kind of her emotions and things with the linchpin on it. I think she was one of I think probably her and. I think she was probably the second lead, almost. Not quite from a amount point of view, but
no, absolutely. Because I watched a video essay recently where it said the husband character of Waymond, he's a beautiful character, but he doesn't have a character arc. And
he's
not
less
meant to.
And again, as we kind of said, there's two versions of him. One of which doesn't have much of a character arc, but is maybe from an acting point of view, it's quite an interesting challenge because he's had to make someone who the same person, but to have two quite different vibes, and he did that very well. But like you say, it's not as built up a character, whereas Stephanie Hsu's character does have more so. So that I thought she was excellent. But no, all the way through the call sheet, the acting is great. But the Jamie Lee Curtis is in a bit of a nothing role, really.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, but it's a pantomime sort of role.
Exactly. So strange. I kind of think it's strange that she won that, but that's not a criticism of the movie, that's criticism of the Oscars.
Yes.
I 100% agree with you. I actually was going to say I think it's 20 minutes too long.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours, 20 minutes, and it could have been 2.
If in any case, it's certainly too long.
Yeah. That's probably my single biggest criticism of it. I did, and I think it was partially in it being too long. I did think it got a bit lost midway through the film and then had to kind of pull itself back. And I think there was a point where it felt like it repeated itself 2 or 3 times.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that's where the additional length came in to me in the middle. I thought that it did start to kind of lose its focus and lose its structure. And the same thing happened a couple of times when if you could have cut it out, it would have and kind of, cut a couple of middle scenes. I think it's where that Kill Your Babies thing is. Visually, they probably look great and they're probably great on paper and they were fun to film, but actually
I kind of agree because I think the moment, and I don't mind sort of talking about this bit because it's been memed to death. The bit that pulls it back is when you see a few versions of Waymond throughout time, and it's the in another life I would have loved to have spent time doing laundry and taxes with you. That's and when it's
Wong Kar-wai kind of style, visual style,
even with this sort of juttery slow motion and the green blue photography. That's when it kind of kicks back into gear, and that's sort of kind of the domino effect of the emotional catharsis gets back on track.
I kind of thought, and I know maybe it's kind of the point, but I kind of thought it could have done without one of the kind of karate scenes in the middle. Like that was where that, and then the first half of that arc, because again, I thought that arc, I loved it. I loved the visuals of it. I liked it kind of like you say, kind of gives momentum back to the film and kind of corrects where the Nietzschean starts to go off track in that kind of it goes more into almost Camus kind of absurdistness in that kind of like, well, nothing matters, so why should I care kind of everything's absurd kind of thing, and then as you say kind of Nietzschean, so that kind of self-destructive reading of Nietzsche,
yes,
or Nietzschean philosophy. But anyway, and that kind of then puts it back on track. And so there is a bit there where I feel like it's getting a little bit too repetitive. But otherwise, it's also it bends genres very well. It's quite funny at times. As I say, it's really, and again, it kind of. They're obviously filmmakers that love a lot of different cinema and different things, and in the different worlds, I kind of like how each one is done in kind of a very different cinematic style as well. And again, that, like the Wong Kar-wai kind of
very much so. And it's very loving towards each of those styles. Like the Kung Fu bit looks like an old Kung Fu
It really
movie.
does, with the kind of like on wires kind of like flying across the sky and stuff. Yeah. It does. No, it works well. Not to give too much away, but the hot dog fingers is quite surreal and quite funny. And yeah. So no, it really works. It really hangs together. My single slight reservation is that it's 20 minutes too long, and I think it's 20 minutes too long because it loses itself and repeats itself a little bit in the middle. And maybe that's where a script editor or something, coming in might have helped.
Another trim or another go around.
But I think that's you got two auteurs who have been given a low budget and kind of can do what they want, then that is a small price to pay for what is one of the most exciting and interesting films of last year.
It's an incredibly original movie. I saw something funny is that people, they asked Oscar voters anonymously, why are you voting for what film for which award? And for Best Original Screenplay, they'd say, well, there's no script more original than Everything Everywhere All at Once. And people saying, that's not what original means in this context. Yeah. Oh, well, I still liked it, so I'm still voting for it.
But it was original.
It was
absolutely. It's not a sequel, or it's not based on a book, or it's not.
No, absolutely. And no, it's just funny that.
Yeah, people not quite understand any definition of original.
That's why they had to jam the two sound Oscars together into just Best Sound, because no one understands really what the difference between mixing and editing is.
Yeah. I mean, that was one thing, actually. I didn't think the soundtrack was particularly exciting. If I wanted to find another.
Yeah, because it was nominated for.
Did it win, didn't it? Win Best Sound?
Oh, for Best Sound. No, I think Top Gun for Best Sound, and for Best Music, it was, I think...
it was the...
All Quiet on the Western Front, but it got nominated for both.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't that exciting. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was passable. There was a couple of... it's something that I feel like I quite notice in films is
a nice, simple piano score, and so not much else.
Yeah, but maybe that's budgetary. But no... It was very innovative, very tight. Well, mostly.
Except when it's not.
Except when it's not. Very well put together. The visual effects work really well. All the acting is really good. Yeah, there's not much negative to say about it.
Yeah, yes. And, those often make for the reviews the pithiest.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. And I think that probably ties us up very nicely for an advert break. And welcome back.
Well, I would buy that for $1.
No. Anyway, on to our second movie, which is Natural Born Killers.
Yes, so this came out in 1994. It's an Oliver Stone film, right at the peak of that sort of MTV Gen X sort of filmmaking. It's about a spree-killing couple who, after... The boy, played by Woody Harrelson, kills the parents of the girl. So that's Mickey and Mallory. And so after he
Knox.
Yes, Knox kills the parents of Mallory. They go on the run, on the lam. And yeah, it's kind of it, really, in terms of plot, until the third act. Of course, as these films do, they get into a lot of fun and trouble. But what's really the thing to look at with this movie isn't the plot so much as the style, because it's made right in that middle of that MTV mixed media patchwork sort of style. So, Johnny, what did you think of Natural Born Killers?
I've seen it before, and I always had it in my head as something I really liked, and I watched it again. I really liked it. It's a bit of a mess at times.
Absolutely.
So it's based on a script by, I believe, Quentin Tarantino.
The story, yeah. Oh, yes, it was based on the script, and he was given a story credit because I think they didn't end up using much of his script.
Okay, fair enough. It kind of felt quite Tarantino-esque at times, but then obviously they were, as soon as Oliver Stone got involved, he was kind of, let's make this about the media. And you kind of can feel it pulling in two directions. Because I don't think Quentin Tarantino really cares about talking and doing an allegory for the media and violence.
He's not a very allegorical filmmaker. He's really not. Like, this is it. This is what it is.
This is cool. I like 1960s Japanese cinema. This is what I'm going to do now. So that's kind of obviously what Quentin's more like, whereas this is more Oliver Stone, where he has to be saying something about something. So it is a bit of a mess. You can feel these two kind of forces fighting in it. And it becomes, it almost feels like two films glued together. So you kind of have the first 2/3, and then we can spoil this one because it's the old film. So you kind of get the first 2/3, which is Vicky and Mallory on the run, which is all quite kind of fun and ultra violent and silly. And then it kind of peppers in these couple of characters of a cop chasing them down and a journalist played by Robert Downey Jr. doing, I think it's meant to be an Australian accent.
I think it is, yes.
I'm not quite sure what accent he's doing. In the days when I'm pretty sure he was doing a lot of drink and drugs and is a very over-the-top performance. And then it kind of cuts to them in jail, and those two characters are given a lot more prominence, and then it has the most scenery-chewing performance by Tommy Lee Jones ever, which I quite enjoyed, to be fair. And it does feel like two films kind of glued together. It could have ended with them dying in a shootout at the end of the kind of second act, and the third act almost feels a bit tacked on. But overall, I like it. It's very phonetic, and actually, you'd think the phoneticness would get really galling and grating, and I personally didn't find it that, which is a big problem with some of that kind of era of films. Again, where it kind of feels like two films glued together, it is a bit too long. I think you could have trimmed 15, 20 minutes out of it. But it's kind of very genre bending. It kind of, although it kind of hits you over the head with a sledgehammer with the message, it kind of does tell the message, I think. It kind of says, if we kind of show violence and stuff on TV and in the media and get off on ratings and get off on all these things, then you're probably only violence begets more violence, which I think is probably what Oliver Stone is trying to say at his core. And I think it gets that message across. And I think all the acting and the central performances are really good.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty much in agreement. I thought that I would be more annoyed by it because I'm not really a big fan of that sort of mid-90s MTV patchwork kaleidoscope mixed media thing, bringing in a little bit of animation, bringing a little bit of black and white.
That was the one, but I didn't think worked was animation. I thought that was very tacked in.
The little bit when he does murder Mallory's parents, it's done in the style of a 1950s sitcom like I Love Lucy.
Which to me kind of worked because the fact that
I like that.
They'd got in
Rodney Dangerfield
to do it. Yeah, he's perfect for that role.
Absolutely no idea what was going on. He's I don't understand any of this. What's going on? What's going on here at all? It
was the same thing when he was doing Caddyshack, I think. So
yeah, he had no idea what was going on, but it does work. And I agree with you. When they go to prison, the wheels come unstuck a bit, and the momentum slows down as you focus on Robert Downey Jr. and the cop, and it's just a bit less fun. With them not around so much.
Even with Tommy Lee Jones trying to spice it up a bit.
He does what he can, but he's only one man. And Robert Downey Jr.'s his accent and his performance is ridiculous. But again, he's all right. He's a bit too OTT, I think, in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
and none of that half is as interesting. And
I think when you make Juliette Lewis look like she's calm and collected,
exactly,
you're probably kind of step too far.
She's kind of drugged up and you separate Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis, and so a lot of what you're watching the film for just kind of goes away. And also, it's a problem of it being contained. It's in a prison, so in the open desert, which is where they're usually running around in, doing that weird visual style and kaleidoscope sort of thing. You get the space to do it, but when you do it in a prison, it sort of just feels boxy suddenly. So yeah, it is a film of two halves. One half is a lot better than the other. And unfortunately, it's in the wrong direction. It'd be better to wow them in the end.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate. But
the other thing as well, again, when they get in the prison, you can't really start like projecting burning fire through windows and things in prisons. It visually feels a lot, apart from like Tommy Lee Jones's spit flying out of his mouth, visually it kind of really calms.
They do try, but yeah, it calms down a lot. What's interesting is the critical reception of this film. It was so polarizing. So Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4. He loved it. But there are critics that put it on their worst of lists, but there are also critics who put it on their best of lists. It really did split people. Before the Razzies were a big thing, it was the Stinkers Awards, and it won for Worst Actor for Woody Harrelson. But,
really?
But
he's actually good
at the Venice Film Festival, Juliette Lewis won Best Actress. So it really did cut people right right in half. And I can kind of see why, because it's a film that dares to have an opinion. It's not something you go, oh, it's all right. I like the car chase. I like the bit with the thing, and I like the bit with the thing. This is a film like you will come out of it with a strong opinion one way or another, and that's kind of fun. I like films that do that. Something that did amuse me when I was looking at the cast list, looking, as you said, Robert Downey Jr. At the time of his life when he was on a lot of drugs. So you have Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, Tom Sizemore, and Robert Downey Jr. Imagine the mountains of cocaine that were being gone through on that set.
I get the feeling that possibly
and Oliver
Stone as well. Yeah.
I mean, that whole production must have been fueled.
The Fresh Flowers budget was high.
Yeah. It must have been fueled by clouds of white just coming off.
To be fair, it looks like it on the screen.
Oh yeah, the dilated pupils all around.
Yeah, fisheye lenses. Do you know what it kind of, as well, cinematically more so than anything Oliver Stone has done before, is it kind of very much reminded me of kind of Terry Gilliam in that kind of
very much so.
Wide angle lenses, close up, very surreal. And actually, ironically, Robert Downey Jr.'s performance kind of reminds me of Brad Pitt in 12 Monkeys, which again I always thought was maybe one dial on the acting notch too high.
Possibly.
And it's kind of that kind of like very chewing the scenery, spitting, twisting the arms.
It doesn't really look like a Oliver Stone film, because as much of a cocaine-fueled man he was more restrained than this.
Yeah, I mean, look at Wall Street.
Or Platoon.
Yeah,
even Platoon has some moments of madness, like it has flares in the eyes of the baddie as he's just about to kill Charlie Sheen. You know, that's a very much like, well, that's an 80s move, isn't it?
I don't remember the exact number, but I think it said something like one of his average movies has something like 2.7 cuts a minute, and this has like 17 or something. Like, it was like it was very different to how he'd filmed things in the before, and the way all that kind of like back projection things is done is very different to anything I've seen him do before.
And also, it had a sort of sometimes a woozy sort of almost improvisational feel, like when they got married on the bridge and gave each other the rings. That kind of felt like something they were just making up. I'm sure it wasn't, or maybe it was, but it felt almost at odds with its kind of very stylized thing. So I like little moments. But
I think that was it on purpose. I think that was them being real with each other. Whereas a lot of the other times it was, are they on drugs? Are they tripping out? Are they, what is going on in their heads? Are they drunk? Are they this? And it kind of was meant to feel very surreal and all over the place. And
some fantastic moment as well in the desert with snakes. Mm-hmm. And that's very Terry Gilliam-esque. But no, that was sort of like when the film was really at its kind of height, at its full power. It was very kind of trippy, very, kind of out there. It was bold cinema in bright red, primary colours. And so, at its height, for all of its moments where in the last half where it comes a bit unstuck, at its height, it's really firing on all cylinders. It really does go in hard. And I really have to appreciate it for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is a really fun. I think it's quite fun for something that's so ultra violent and bangs you over the head with a message so hard. It's quite fun as well, which is you maybe don't expect. And I think that's where there's more overlap with Everything Everywhere All at Once than because at their core, Everything All at Once is very emotional, and it's about, at the end of the day, it's about this family that's falling apart. Really, that's its core. But actually, it's also a lot of fun. You kind of don't expect it. And this is about two serial killers who drive around killing everybody, and you're meant to be going, yeah, the media's bad, but actually it's a lot of fun as well. Yeah. Which maybe it's like the opposite of what you're meant to think.
Well, they're both films with a philosophy. They're both films that are clearly having a good time telling you their story, and are doing so in a very original, visual, stylistic way that owes a lot to other types of filmmaking. So, there are more links than one might expect.
I can't believe they gave Woody Harrelson, who I thought was one of the more restrained performances in the movie, like the equivalent of a Razzie.
Yeah, the Stinkers Award. I
think that
maybe a nomination, but still, come on. I mean, really, he's just playing Woody Harrelson. How can you not like that?
I think the problem is the people that, like, it's one thing not to put it on like your top 10 movie of the year list, fair enough. And, maybe it's not that level. But to say it's one of the worst movies of the year is
loads.
crazy.
I've got some of the...
Tell me, name them and shame them because they are so clearly wrong. Right. Just from an objective point of view, from a filmmaking point of view, like it did so many interesting new things.
So the year-end lists on Wikipedia, it jams them all together. So should I do the best and worst or just the worst?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so year-end list. Second best for the Milwaukee Journal. I won't name all the journalists because they won't be here forever. Only when it's important. 8th best for Roger Ebert for the Chicago Sun-Times.
That's about right, I reckon.
2 8th bests for both the Palm Beach Post and the Munster Times. Top 10 not ranked for the Birmingham News. Honorable mention, Los Angeles Times. 2 more honorable mentions for the Tulsa World and the Denver Post. Mm-hmm. And actually another honorable mention for the Spokesman Review. But then we get to the worst. Best worst movie, that's more of a fun one for Miami News Times. Worst movie, Peter Travers, Rolling Stone. Worst movie,
wrong.
The Pantograph, second worst.
Wrong.
Staten Island Advance.
Wrong.
10th worst, San Jose Mercury News.
Wrong.
10th worst, Salt Lake Tribune.
Wrong.
Worst film not ranked for the Buffalo News. And top 4 worst not ranked for the Baltimore Sun.
Wrong.
So it just goes to show it's funny that it really had strong opinions. You either really went to bat for it or you didn't.
It kind of reminds me of, I think it was Breaking the Waves that Lars von Trier did, and he did a website where one page he put everyone, again, it was a very polarizing film. One side of it, he put everyone who hated it, and one side of it, he put everyone who loved it. As a way of balance, and I kind of respect that in a way.
Yes,
and I do sometimes think that maybe a polarizing. Anyone can make Avatar: Way of the Water where everyone goes, "Oh, it's 3-star grey."
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's sometimes a polarizing film.
I mean, how many Marvel
fun.
movies get 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes? But when you look at all the reviews, it's all like 3 stars, 3.5, 2.5 stars. They're all mildly positive.
Yeah, exactly.
You get none of that here.
No. I think that I'm almost surprised that Everything Everywhere All at Once wasn't a bit more polarizing because it is kind of strange and difficult. And
I think it was the right movie for the right time.
Yeah,
it came
possibly.
out at a time when I think people were getting a bit fed up with the same sort of movie. Actually, this came out roughly about the same time as the new Doctor Strange, which does the same thing. And Jamie Lee Curtis, yes. Jamie Lee Curtis put out a post saying, "We're cleaning Doctor Strange's clock. We are the multiverse movie to watch right now, not Doctor Strange." So I think people, firstly, were getting bored of multiverses and we're getting bored of bland cinema. So this came along and said, "All right, let's show you how to do it, Sonny."
Yeah. I think it's interesting. It's A24's biggest movie now as well, which surprises me because some of the horror films they've had are pretty big as well.
I think with horror films, though,
there's a certain audiences.
There's certain audiences that will see them, but other people will stay well away. So I think even the biggest horror film is going to have some audiences kind of standing at arm's distance.
They've probably got less repeat value as well,
exactly.
Certainly in the short run. Anyway, I think that probably, unless you've got any more to say.
No, I think that sort of wraps us all up there.
Perfect. So, first off, Callum, a little wrap up and score for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I was jumping between 2 scores, and if I was being totally honest, I would give it a 0.5 on something, but no, we can't here.
You can't have 10, that's just too far.
No, I'm not going to do 10, but it's between 8 and 9. And if I was sort of kind of perfectly honest, it would be probably an 8.5, but of course we have to pick one. So I think just for sheer audacity, originality, and fun, I'm going to go on the higher end and go for 9.
I actually was having the same quandary, but partially, and this is probably maybe we shouldn't come into it, but because of also where I wanted to review the other film, and I kind of think that Everything Everywhere All at Once is a better rounded film, so it deserves a modicum higher. But I actually really like Natural Born Killers. I've always liked it. I like the performances in it. I think for its time, it was quite groundbreaking. And I think it probably I think MTV copied it more than it copied MTV.
So which film are you reviewing now?
I know. So I am also going to give Everything Everywhere All at Once a 9, which probably gives you a clue to what I'm going to give Natural Born Killers. But yeah.
So for Natural Born Killers, just because it does come a little unstuck at the end, so dock it a little bit for that. So I'm going to go for an 8, but I may have gone as high as a 9 had the second half been as consistent as the first. But it's thoroughly enjoyable throughout, kaleidoscopic, goofy, bold, it plays by its own rules, and that annoyed people, and I always like that. So go for an 8 out of 10 for it.
I'm also giving it an 8,
Well.
which is why I gave Everything All at Once a 9, because I was like, I don't want to give Natural Born Killers a 7. It deserves more than a 7,
It
but I
does.
didn't want to give them the same score because I do think that as a like sanded off around the edges, despite it being a little bit too long in the middle, Everything Everywhere All at Once is probably the slightly better movie. Because, like you say, that last act, the wheels do start. I don't think the wheels fly off, but the tyres start to deflate.
Yeah, it comes a little bit. We're mixing our metaphors now, but it does. It comes a
I'm
little
not
bit.
mixing my metaphor.
It comes a little bit unstuck. It does start to lose its way a bit, I think.
Absolutely. No, I think it. Yeah, I think it works, but it doesn't stick the landing perfectly. And like you say, like if it had a stronger last third, it would be up there. It would be a 9.
If someone had given Robert Downey Jr. kind of a cold bath, a coffee,
Not a coffee. He doesn't need any
oh
more.
no, maybe
A chamomile tea.
taken away his medicine, then maybe it'd be all right. And said, you don't have to go for the accent, Rob. No.
Yeah, possibly Australian. Anyway, so for one rare occurrence, we have both agreed on both movies.
Very,
Interesting
very
enough.
of agreement here.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So actually, I would say both watches go out there. They are Everything Everywhere All at Once is available in the UK on Amazon Prime. I don't know where it is available anywhere else, but in the UK it's on Amazon Prime. And Natural Born Killers was on Disney Plus and I think Amazon Prime as well.
Yeah, you had your choice.
You have your choice. So get out there and watch them if you haven't seen them. Tell us what your thoughts are on our Instagram and have a great week.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.